Well, good morning. It is now the 26th and I'm out here in some dryland canola. It's a little cooler this morning here, and you can see this dryland canola has pretty much finished flowering. Just a few flowers left, and they're probably not going to do a whole lot. It is still managing to set a few pods, but not a whole pile. Insect numbers are starting to come back up in this field, so there's quite a bit of Nymphaligus, some of them in the fourth instar stage already, so they would be starting to do some feeding damage here now. So we'll have to keep an eye on these guys. For the most part, the more mature pods are now hardened off to the point where they're starting to get a little bit leathery, so there's going to be pretty minimal feeding damage on those, but could still happen in the next little while here. Well, we're at that time when guys are starting to ask about swath timing. So this head on the right here, this is basically still in soft dough stage. Kernels are still pretty soft, they're easy to squish, they're above 30% moisture. So this, if you were to swath it or do a pre-harvest on it now, you'd probably lose some test weight on it. It would shrink down a bit. Whereas this head right here, this one is basically just coming into the hard dough stage. So I can't really squish the kernels anymore, but I can make a dent with my thumbnail. So we're probably close to that 30% moisture level on this. So this would be a good timing for swathing or for a pre-harvest application. You'd have pretty minimal shrinkage on a head like this. Well, here's a miss in the field of some really big kochia that gives a good opportunity to talk about pre-harvest timing on things like kochia. So if you're coming in cereals or in pulses to do pre-harvest timing, and you've got kochia this big, which you probably do because it's been a dry year, it's really important to use high water rates and to hit it from multiple angles, especially with a ground sprayer, depending on your nozzle setup. If you come over and you hit this from one side, you're probably going to get good coverage on one side. You might not necessarily get the off side. And with a contact only product, you're going to want to hit that from both sides. So I know that means, multiple passes through the field, but if you're just doing the headlands of the field, hit it one way, hit it the other way, do a good job on that kochia. You'll be happy you did it in the end. Well, some of this dryland barley up by Carmen Gate is coming along. Some of these most mature heads are coming into the hard dough stage. Most are still in soft dough stage, and we have a lot of tillers that are just coming up into boot stage here. So these are not really going to amount to a whole lot. I think there's only, like 3 or 4 florets on this whole head. So we are rapidly approaching the timing where we're pretty much going to have to do a pre-harvest or a swathing on this. Well, this dryland Cantera canola has had a huge explosion in insect numbers over the last week. You can see here we have just absolutely hundreds of Lygus. These little guys are just starting to get a bit of color to them, so they're mostly in the fourth instar stage, which they can start causing damage. And a lot of these pods are still green and soft enough that they can still be fed upon, so we better get these guys under control sooner rather than later. Well, these yellow peas are now 3 days post-harvest with Reglone Ion, and as you can see here in this thistle patch, there's been a lot of dry down in here already. The Reglone at 20 gallons an acre really did a pretty good job at burning these thistles down, so they're already drying up and crisping up, which is nice to see. Well, we're really at that time of the year where the stress is really making the crop look more advanced than it is. This dryland durum here is very, very heavily stressed. Looking pretty ripe, but when you get down in here and you start squeezing these florets, they're basically, just at the end of milk stage. This one is basically early dough, but you get into, some of these little greener areas here, the heads are still very milky, so we're still a ways away yet. Well, the safflower this week is flowering really well. It started on the dryland corners where it was under stress, and now most of the field is flowering, although it's hard to see through all the kochia. There's pretty poor weed control for kochia generally in safflower. And you can see this one here has a rare white flower. Don't see that too terribly often. They're mostly yellow through red. Well, the grasshoppers along the west side of Lethbridge are certainly severe. It's a good thing the crop is dried down to the point where there's nothing for them to feed on anymore, but along the edge of the field, wow, they are bad. Yeah, with grasshopper numbers like this in the barley, the protein levels are going to be really high coming out of the combine this year. You can still see along the edge of the field that there's still a decent quantity of deceased grasshoppers along here, which tells me the coragen actually is still working, which is remarkable because it was just a light rate, and that was quite some time ago now. That was almost 4 weeks ago. The level of grasshoppers here is just absolutely unreal. They're eating this south thistle, and like this, there's there's 100 of them on this sow thistle. It's just absolutely crazy. I've never seen anything like this before. The ground is literally just coated in grasshopper poop. They're even eating the dead ones that were killed by the Coragen that we sprayed in here about 4 weeks ago. And here is some grasshopper cannibalism going on. They are gutting each other as they are running out of food. They're eating their own dead. All right, well, here in this field by Welling, we do have a couple patches of wild oats in this durum, and these survived both a group 2 and a group 1 in crop. So we're going to take a sample today. These are just mature enough now. I can start taking a sample of these more mature ones along the top, let them dry down. I can send them off for resistance testing. Here along the edge of this canola field, there is quite a bit of grasshopper feeding going on. You can see all these stripped pods as the grasshoppers feed. So we're going to sweep this field for Lygus bugs, and if it's over threshold, it's going to get sprayed. Well, I don't think there was really any guesses on last week's weed, but it is curly cup gumweed, so named because it is so gummy and sticky, and it kind of has these curly, it's almost like the male part of Velcro all along the heads. They stick to everything, kind of a miserable thing, but kind of just a weed of wastelands. It doesn't really do much. Well, here in this canola field, you can see we do have some plants are prematurely ripening, and when you pull them up, sure enough, they are rotten full of blackleg. So we are seeing a return of the blackleg this year, which is not nice to see. But good news for next year, Syngenta is going to have a new seed treatment called Saltro, which is supposed to control it. So we'll see how that goes. Well, here in this spring wheat by Lethbridge, the soft white wheat is doing pretty well. It's just coming into dough stage and it's looking pretty good. There is some grasshoppers in here, but we're still kind of right, you know, about half of threshold in this field, so it's not really worth spraying. And at this point, you got, you know, 28-day MRLs and stuff like that on your cereals for, you know, products like Matador silencer. So really you shouldn't be spraying them anymore at this point anyways. You could still spray Coragen in a field like this. There is enough green that it would still be taken up by the plant and would still have some benefit if grasshoppers are feeding on the green material. But if your field is more advanced than this and you want to control grasshoppers, pretty much your only alternative left would be something like EcoBrand. So EcoBrand is a wheat brand product that's been treated with an insecticide carbile as well as an attractant to cause grasshoppers to seek it out and feed on it. It is very effective. We do have some in stock, and we also have the applicator to blow it on as well. So if you need to control ditches or anything like that, that's a great option. Well, here by Lethbridge, this corn is now over 1 lisle tall, you know, maybe 1 1/4, and it is starting to silk. So we do have silk emergence here now as these ears are beginning to develop. Well, here's a transition line in the field between reseeded barley and reseeded oats for some late silage. And you can see the barley is nice and green, although a little bit farther behind in staging compared to the oats. The oats are a good 5-6 inches taller. And we do have a little bit of burn on the leaf tips of the oats, probably from herbicide, which was sprayed in here about 2 weeks ago. So the new growth, the new leaves are perfectly fine and healthy. And the weed control is There's some of these larger pigweeds have survived the Enforcer M, but they are stunted, and these oats should outgrow them pretty rapidly. So things should look better in here in a week or two. Well, my video earlier this week of the grasshoppers eating the sow thistle proved to be very popular, so I thought I'd come out here and do a time lapse of them eating one of these sow thistles, but I think I was a little too slow. They have literally eaten everything along the edge of this field. All these sow thistles totally gone. Absolutely crazy. Look at this, they're now so hungry they're even eating the kochia. That's really interesting, haven't really seen that yet. All right, and here in this field, this is right by West Lethbridge, is the kind of grasshopper damage a guy really doesn't like to see. You can see there is also some sawfly in here. There's a lot of these stems are pinched off right at the base and are down, but you can also see a lot of these heads sitting here on the ground, and this is grasshopper damage. They've cut these heads right off. So definitely there's going to be a yield reduction in a field like this, and the grasshoppers are still in here, still feeding. Well, it is that time of the year again. I'm going to try to take a holiday next week, so I'm going to head up to the mountains, go camping for a week. So I will be out of the service area. My phone will not be working. So there won't be a video next week, and if you normally count on my assistance and you're not one of my normal customers, then you'll just have to call the office and talk to Jens or Kirsten, and they'll take care of you. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.